It's time to go back to the old email that we discussed a few videos ago, where client changed his mind on what should happen when the admin updates some checklist or checklist group. And they listed the scenarios, which basically comes down to this icon. So whenever something is changed on the admin area, this should show new or updated, basically. Let's try to implement that. So I'm logged in as a simple user, and in here we'll have new or updated icons. And this is a pretty complex thing. I was trying to draw the structure like 30 minutes before this video, and probably this video will be a bit longer, and maybe I will change my mind in the course of shooting this video, so stay with me. I'm trying to make it as natural as possible, so I'm kind of live coding, and let's begin. So first thing we need to do is go back to our sidebar blade and refactor this. After all, I was postponing and procrastinating on that, but this structure cannot be in the blade and it should be somewhere else. And let's create a View Composer class. If we take a look at the official Laravel documentation, View Composer is just any class that has view with inside. So we will have view with menu, and let's copy that into our code. There is no command to create View Composer with artisan, so we will just create http subfolder view, then composers inside of it, another folder composers, and create a file menu composer php. Let's paste what I've copied from there, and let's rename the things that we don't need. So profile composer becomes menu composer. We don't need any repository here, we don't need any construct here, and compose will contain view with user menu, for example, and we will get that menu from the sidebar statement, so something like this. So menu, for example, will be this, and let's format it a bit better. So with checklist get. Let's reformat it with PHP Storm. Great. So we have menu with menu. Then we need to use that menu in here. So for each of the user menu variable as group, actually user menu, something like this. And then we need to register that composer in app service provider. According to the documentation, we need to have boot method of app service provider. And in here we add view with facade composer, view of sidebar, menu composer class, like this. And let's reload our sidebar and see if nothing is broken. Refresh. Undefined variable user menu. Okay, let's take a look. Oh, it's probably because of the partial sidebar. It's not just sidebar, it's partials sidebar. Let's try again. Refresh. Yay, it works. So we refactored. Our menu now is not in Blade, it's in the View Composer. Step 1 done. Next, looking at the original description and how it looks, I already see that we have more data here in the upcoming lessons, like how much of the tasks are finished and stuff like that. So let's transform our menu in a bit different structure. So we have all the menu from the database. And now let's create the groups array. Let it be an array instead of a collection. And then we will do for each of the menu as group. And we will add the group into our groups with some more data. You can perform that with eloquent collections if you wish, but I will use just simple arrays. Group equals group, like this. So we add that into the array. Let's transform that one into the array. So we will work with arrays for now. And group is an array, but into the group we add a few more things. So is new equals false by default. Then is updated equals false by default, and we will override them in the future. Then for each of the group we have the actual checklists. So for each of the group checklists as checklist, and we will modify the value of the checklist. So we need to add and here. So checklist also is new false and is updated false. Like this, is new is updated. And also to the checklist we add those two numbers of amount of tasks. So checklist tasks equals 0 for now, and let's duplicate completed tasks 0 for now. Oh, let's actually tasks 1, let's hard code it for now, and then we will show that all in the sidebar. And now we have those groups. Okay, and we can return those groups as user menu. And then in the sidebar, we don't work with collections anymore, we work with arrays. So group name, then for each of group checklists as checklists. So checklist is not a collection anymore, so it will be checklist ID. And what else do we need? Checklist name. Let's see if we didn't break anything for now. Let's just refresh the page. Refresh. No errors. Great. Now let's try to add is new or is updated here. For now, for example, just as text, if checklist is new and if new. Again, did we break anything? No. But let's assign is new to the true here. For example, here. Refresh, and we have the new. Great, the logic works. Now let's implement the actual design of that icon. So we go to Core UI Demo, we click Inspect of that new icon, which already is present for us. So we have that span badge info, and we can copy that element into our link. So in here, instead of just new, we will have, actually it's inside of the link from what I remember. So new line, span new, and adding if statement here. And let's refresh the page and see how it looks. Yep, we have the new. Great. Let's add updated. So else if checklist is updated, then we show the updated. So updated, something like this. And let's try it out to false here. I like to do uppercase for true or false. It's a personal preference. Refresh and updated. Or actually, let's stick to UPD because it takes quite a lot of space, so updated. Great. Let's reformat it with PHP Storm, and let's implement the same thing for checklist groups. So inside of that li, I'm not even sure if it would work because it's not a link, but let's try it out. So if checklist, we change checklist to group, paste, and let's see how it works. It doesn't show anything, of course, because it's false by default, but if we turn that to true, refresh, we have the new. Great. So it's not aligned on the right, but still it shows new or updated. Great. Now let's get back to false, false by default, and then we will implement the actual logic of when it is new or updated. We will use checklist groups created at and updated at fields, but we need to compare there with something on the users table. And we don't have any fields, so we need to create the, for example, last action at for users table, and we will automatically fill that in with middleware and then compare here in the view composer. So step by step. PHP artisan make migration, add last action add to users table. Then in the last action in the middleware, sorry, in the migration we add table timestamp, last action add. By default it is nullable, and by default it is null. And then we need to use user model, add that to the user models fillable. So last action add. And when do we save that action? To be honest, we need to fill that in on any action on whatever page is loaded. So we need to have some kind of a default middleware on everything. So if we go to routes web, when the person is logged in, we need to add another middleware. So on top of auth, let's add another save last action, for example, save last action timestamp. Let's call it this one. And save last action timestamp will be a middleware. Let's create PHP artisan make middleware save last action middleware like this. And then inside of that save last action, all we need to do here is if user is not logged in for whatever reason, let's check or double check. If we are logged in, then we do auth user update last action add equals now, like this. And that's all we do here. We just update, we don't restrict anything anywhere. We have that handle, and then in the kernel file app http kernel, we need to add that middleware and register that with the name that we used in the routes. So routes save last action timestamp, and we add that for now as a route middleware here. For now, maybe we will move that somewhere else. I have a suspicion about it. So save last action middleware class. Great, and it is automatically added in use statement here on top. Now let's run the migrations. PHP artisan migrate. It should add that field. If we take a look at the database, we have our users table. I was doing a lot of testing and registrations, and now we have last action add as null, right? Now let's try to register again with a new user, or actually let's just refresh. Do we have any errors? We don't, but do we have anything filled in? We do have last action add as a timestamp of now. And this is exactly what we wanted, and now we can compare that last action add to the created add or updated add of every menu item here. And let's add last action add as a parameter here. So last action add equals auth user last action add. For example, here, if it is null, because it can be null from the database or may not exist, then we assigned what? Like last action was really long time ago, like it never existed. So for example, now sub years of 10 or something like that. You can assign a different value if you want. So now we have last action add. Actually, it should be up top before the for each. So we have our last action add. It's not used yet. So let's check the checklist from false to, for example, carbon new of checklist created add. So we create a carbon object, created add, because it's not carbon object anymore as we converted that into array. So we compare that carbon new, or actually carbon create, carbon create, and then greater than auth user, or we do have that last action add. So it should be true or false. And in our database, let's change created add to something in the future. We save and refresh the page and see that it's new. Great. And also let's add is updated, is not checklist is new. So if it's new, it should not be updated. And then the same condition. So not is new and updated add greater than last action. Let's see if we didn't break anything. No errors here. And let's now change updated add, for example, to even further time in the future, and let's see if it shows updated. And we have updated here. Great. So now our conditions are great for checklists, and let's do the same for checklist groups. So is new and is updated is not just false, it will be group is new, like this, group updated add, and let's change that to false, from false to those. Undefined index is new. Oh, it should be group. Group is new and group is updated. Refresh, and we have that updated. But now we have another condition. As client explained, if that checklist group is new, then there's no need to show the icons for checklist group items, which is really logical. So let's add another condition. So we will add is new to the checklist only if group is not new. So if group is not new, like this and this. Similar here, not group is updated, Let's try to change the created add for the checklist group in the database. Here we have launch new feature. Let's change that to May in the future, and let's refresh. We have new here, but updated here. That's interesting. Well, actually, it's not really a realistic scenario, because if it's a new checklist group, it shouldn't be updated, it should be created or something like that. So for checklists, we should have something like this. So this is updated in the future or something like that. And now, as we saved, we shouldn't see this updated. Refresh. That's exactly what I wanted. Final test I wanted to do, and this is actually a bug I see. I logged in as an admin and I wanted to try the scenario of real life, so without really faking created add from the database. Let's try to create a new checklist group, and we will get to that bug in the future because I see it shows the deleted items. But anyway, let's create a new checklist group, new group for example. We save. Oh, another bug. Route home is not defined. Of course, everywhere from the admin I was redirecting to home. So let's change all of that along the way, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to manage anything. So everywhere we have return redirect route to home, it should be route welcome. Or maybe in the future we will change that when the client actually tests that and defines where to redirect. Okay, so checklist controller here, Here, maybe there's a multi-replace in PHP Storm, but I think I will do it quicker manually. Okay, it doesn't contain home. Let's check home. Nothing found. Okay, so let's continue that again. The name has been already taken, but we do have new checklist group. And now let's log in with that user that I was logged in previously and see if we see new icon on the sidebar. Okay, so we log in as a user and we see the new icon here, but we don't see that here. And that's what I was afraid of. Probably last action add is changed before we check that. So let's see, the value of last action add is 1021, which is exactly what my clock is showing. And the checklist group is probably before that, 1019. So we need to set the last action add afterwards. So after everything is done in Laravel, we need to have middleware not on the routes web here, not in the save last action timestamp as here. We need to add middleware afterwards. And to do that, we will use a thing called Terminable Middleware. So here I've opened the documentation of Laravel. You can add another function called terminate in your middleware. So instead of having the handle here in our middleware, we will have another function which will actually contain all the logic. So handle just will redirect to the next request. And here we will use terminate, and that's basically all we need to do. So terminate will be executed after the request, but here's a catch here. Auth check will return false by then. For now, we have request and response variables, and we will operate with them. So if request user, it's not a function, it's a variable. So if request user, then request user update, like this, should be working. And we don't need to change anything else in the kernel or in routes web. We don't need to re-register it somewhere. We should be working with just terminal middleware by default. And if we refresh our page, nothing is broken, as you can see. And let's see if it was updated. Refresh, it was updated. If I click here, 1036, it was successful. And now if we try to add that new group from the admin, let's try to do that again. So we add a new checklist group, group 2 for example. Now we log in back with that user. If we refresh the data now, 1036, if we log in, we have the new here, great. But if we refresh the page, probably that new will disappear. Of course, because now my last action is after the new menu item was created. And we will fix that a bit later in the next lesson. So for now, let's stop it here. The video is already too long. So we're halfway there to implement new and updated here on the sidebar after admin changes. We will continue in the next lesson.